This is the Phoenix mind, where the fire refines, break the chains and rise to shine. Rise on the lead with heart, every end a brand new start. With Lisa Manzo we transform, we ignite. This is the Phoenix mind.
Hi, welcome to the Phoenix Mind Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Manzo, and today my special guest is Patti Clark, and I'm going to read you her bio so you can learn all about her.
Thank you.
Author Patti Clark has been described as a cross between Elizabeth Gilbert and Julia Cameron. Patti is an award-winning author, accomplished speaker, and workshop leader. As the author of This Way Up, 7 Tools for Unleashing Your Creative Self and Transforming Your Life, Patti has been featured on TVNZ's Breakfast Show. Her work has been featured in numerous publications, including the Wall Street Journal, the Boston Globe, the Mindful Word, Thrive Global. Her own experience as a middle-aged woman in recovery is deeply reflected in her new book, Recovery Road Trip, Finding Purpose and Connection on the Journey Home. Patti was born and raised in Northern California, lived in New Zealand for many years, and is now living in Portugal. Wow, how cool that, what a world traveler you are. Let's say that way. That's not, I want to say welcome.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Great to be here.
I'm glad to have you. I love to start with gratitude, so thank you. And so let's talk, in your bio, you talk about recovery. So tell us your story, because in 2 or 3 minutes, we like to hear your stories because we like to relate. Because
Yep.
As whoever we relate to, they can help us. So tell us.
Exactly. You and I spoke briefly before about our childhood stuff and what we manifest from childhood. I was brought up in a really dysfunctional family. My own mother died of alcoholism when I was 16. And the way that I dealt with that was my own addiction, my own alcoholism. I was brought up in San Francisco in the 60s and 70s, so drugs and alcohol were readily available. And I learned to numb out. I also told you in my family system, I was the mascot. I was fun and cute. And so I was either ha 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 cute or real high and spaced out. And that continued for many years until just before I was 30. I was wanting to have kids, and I said I was not going to be my mother. And that was my narrative. And I got sober 2 days before my 30th birthday. That was in 1988. And I was sober through pregnancy, sober through breastfeeding. And then after I had been sober for almost 13 years, I got very arrogant, and which is the best way to describe it. Decided I could do this. I know this. I've read the books. I'm good. And I started drinking again. And I drank for another 13 years and got sober again in 2014. So that was 11 years ago. So yeah, sober 11 years ago. And so thank goodness I didn't hurt anyone. I didn't kill anyone, just myself, and wasted life for a lot of years. There's a saying in recovery, while we're sober, our addiction is, just outside the door doing push-ups, staying strong. And, that's what was happening. I got into the space where I'm good. I'm good. I don't need you people anymore. And thought, I can have a glass of wine. I can do this. And then the real clincher for me, Lisa, was when I started hiding bottles of wine and thought, oh, red flag. This is a little bit too familiar. So thank goodness I made it.
I'm glad you made it. So those 13 years so after 13 years, you went back to drinking. I know you said you didn't lose anything, but what did it cost you emotionally for yourself?
Yeah. I lost a lot. I'm grateful I didn't hurt anyone, kill anyone. I lost a lot. Oh my God, what did it cost me? Almost my marriage. I'm lucky it didn't. I was able to, work through that and more therapy and work with my husband. I'll get back to the question in a minute, but such an important question idea here is how well I manipulated my husband into codependence. That's one of the things I really realized when I got sober the second time, just how well I pulled him into the role of, I'd talk with him before a party or something and make this deal with him like, okay, I'm only going to have 2 drinks. Make sure I only have 2 drinks. It's sort of like, oh man, this sick thing that happens, just the way I just sort of pulled him in, unconsciously, of course, but oof. And, luckily, after I got clean and sober again, I was able to make amends with my kids and heal that. My kids were very forgiving, and I was pretty good at hiding a lot of the stuff. But, what did I lose mostly? Life. It's like I was checked out for 13 fucking years. It's insane. So that's the short answer.
Right? Because you didn't, yeah, the good experiences, the fun. And then, so in your bio, it says that, so you're an author and, this way up, the 7 tools. Let's talk about that. Give us a tool. Give us a tool.
um, well, because you were just talking about it right at the beginning of the show, one of the tools is gratitude. And the 7 tools are basically different ways to connect with inner self. And so a lot of it is about, taking time, pausing, journaling, visualizing, meditating, breathing, and practicing gratitude on a daily basis. So really things that we learn in therapy, we learn in a lot of books, we learn in recovery, that's mostly about being present, connecting to self, focusing on that which we're grateful for and not that which we are unhappy about, which tends to be, something that we do quite often. The whole, negativity complex, that whole idea that what's good will often bounce off us like Teflon, but what is negative will stick to us like Velcro. If you're at a party and someone says, everybody you see says you look great, and one person says, "Ooh, not a good hair day," and that's what I would leave with, and just that whole idea of that negativity focus, that negativity bias. And so one of the best ways to switch that is with gratitude.
That's awesome. I just, yeah, gratitude's so important. It's like, it's changed my life. It's like, I always used to say people didn't appreciate me. And, well, I don't know if you know, but you may know. When whatever you want, you have to give it out first before you can get it. So once I shifted and I started with gratitude and thanking people for things they did for me, or, yeah, oops, I hit my button. Yeah, it's the things they did for me, like when I would be at work and I'm working with another nurse or somebody else. I'm thank you for your help today. Just showing gratitude because the more I showed gratitude, the more things that I was able to be grateful for.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the other thing was, and thank you for this. So I'm going to tell the story what happened. So we were supposed to meet an hour ago, and my son came to visit me. And my son and I, our timing was slightly off. And he left right at the moment Patty and I was supposed to have our podcast, which is like an hour ago. And she ever so graciously allowed me to reschedule and give me that hour to process the fact that he walked out the door and he's on to his next adventure. And I'm grateful for the visit that I had with him. And I'm also grateful for you and for giving me that moment. And I knew I needed it. And as soon as you offered it to me, I took it. I mean, I could have pushed through and I was so grateful I didn't have to. And Patty, because you understand this, you understand that I did need the time to process. And it's okay to take the time. And let's talk about that. How did you
Yeah. Say again,
how did you learn that it's important to take the time for yourself
oh,
you need?
um, I didn't learn that until after I had been sober for a while because my MO was mostly hurry up, hurry up. I walked fast, I talked fast, I drank fast, I did everything fast, and everything was, I had schedules, I wrote things down, even if it had nothing to do with work. That's just how I operated, fast. And one of the first things that I was told in therapy after I'd been sober for a while was, how would it feel to slow down? How would it feel to actually take the time you need to do things like process instead of get busy? I mean, get busy was one of my go-to avoidance things. And that terrified me because if I slowed down to process and actually take that time, then I would be right in the middle of feelings. And that was terrifying because in the family system that I was brought up in, it was way too scary to feel much because there was so much dysfunction in our house. And so one of my methods was I was busy. I spun like a top. And when I was young, and I continued that, but then I included drugs and alcohol too. But that the busier I felt and the more lists I made, the more I didn't have to feel. And that's not healthy as we learn. But when I first got sober and started doing therapy, and that suggestion was made by my therapist, it was scary. It was really scary. And what happened was I emoted a lot. And so you asked what the tools were in this way up and in Recovery Road Trip is journaling. The second half of both books is a journaling workbook. And I had always journaled when I was younger, but I started journaling quite earnestly. And that helped immensely. So that journaling for me is just such a touchstone. If I'm going to pause and I'm going to feel the depth of the feelings that come up, journaling for me is a way to process that and to take that inner turmoil out and put it down on paper.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the journaling thing. I still fight with myself about this because and I have a couple of courses online, and one of them, all the healing courses have journaling prompts on it because that's really just such an absolutely fabulous way to get it out. When I remember as a child never wanting to put anything in writing because I didn't have any privacy.
Mm.
And people would violate my privacy. So I didn't want anybody to know what I was thinking because as a child, it can be used against you. It can be used against you as an adult, but yet as a child, you don't really have the tools to deal with that and know how to handle that. So I refused, and I so wish I had kept the journals as a child of what I was thinking. You know, there was no guarantee of privacy, and I know that my mother would go through my bag and grab phone numbers of my friends and stuff because that's when we didn't have phones and we had phone books, those little mini black books,
Right.
and I was right not to keep a journal because she just validated my experience that I knew it wasn't safe for me. And now as an adult, now I live by myself, so I can journal all I want. And then when I journal really bad things, not bad things, when I journal negative stuff, I throw it in the shredder as a way of releasing it. Some people burn it. I'm not a fan of fire, so I like to shred it to pieces.
Yep.
Get rid-
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. And whatever way it is that we can externalize that process. So it's not the rat wheel going around in our head or that that angsty squirming stuff in my stomach. And yeah, I rip it up or get it in water and turn it back into pulp or burn it. Or, because I don't like keeping it either. I usually, if I'm writing just to get it out, I usually will destroy it like, okay, it's out, it's externalized, and it's gone.
Oh yeah. So what I actually do is I have a spiral notebook for anything I'm gonna shred.
Yeah.
And I also have a bound book. And in the bound book, at the end of my day, it's a work in progress. I don't get to it every day, but it's a work in progress. At the end of the day, I write all the really great things that happened to me today. So in my journal today, it'll be, oh, I got to see my son. Oh, Patty gave me time to process. Look, see, I'm getting emotional, you know, and all the good things, because I want to hold on to the good stuff. So it goes into a bound journal. And this is, and it's a great healing thing because when I'm having a bad day, I can just go back and look and say, well, look at all these good things that happened to me,
Mm, mm.
right?
Absolutely.
And it's so wonderful. And then you wrote a second book and I'm sorry, what's the name of the second?
Recovery road trip.
So Recovery Road Trip that's about getting sober, I'm assuming.
Well, it's what's called an allegorical narrative. That's what my publisher calls it.
I mean,
And that basically what that means is it's a storytelling of of something. So it's not memoir specific, but there's a lot of me in it. So it's a story of a woman named Meg. So not me, Meg. However, Meg is a lot of me, and she's Meg gets sober, and it starts to lose the shine. She's not feeling it like she did. This, which is a lot of stuff that happened to me before I went out and started drinking again. Her father dies. She goes to clean up his mess, and she's left his car and a bit of money, and she goes on a road trip. And on this road trip, she meets different people along the way, and with each person she meets, she sort of gleans new knowledge and learns certain things. And then the second half of this book, similar to This Way Up, is a journaling notebook about sort of following Meg's journey, but so that the reader can follow along with the protagonist, and the prompts tie into each of the places that Meg went and each of the things that she learned along the way. And so it's a 12-week journaling workbook.
yeah, for 12 weeks, one for each of the steps.
Yeah. Not specifically, but I mean, because one of the things is that I'm still in 12-step recovery, but I've had some pushback because I question some things. I struggle with some stuff with 12-step, and I'm still in 12-step, and I still go to meetings and etc. But I've struggled with pieces of it and I talk about that in the book, and there are some people that don't want to hear it. So I've had a bit of pushback.
Well, I want to hear it. So tell me what you struggle with in 12-step recovery, because I'm interested because, this is the part they don't talk about when you're in recovery and you're in a 12-step program. Because, I met some people in 12-step recovery and they're like, well, you have to do service. And I was like, yes, I do. And I understand that. Yet I need to do service at home first, because I'd never done it at home. So I'm going to do my service in my house. Well, you got to do service for others. I said, I am doing service for others. I'm doing service to my children, which they deserved when they were growing up, which they didn't get. So we really butted heads on, my sponsor and I really butted heads on this. And I was adamant and I refused to budge. So tell me your struggle.
Well, a lot of this was when I got so. I'll try not to digress too much, but I mean, I could give you pat points, but I do better storytelling. What can I say? I got sober in a 12-step meeting in Tucson, Arizona, in a women's meeting where I felt loved and where I felt just nurtured and held. We moved to New Zealand, and in New Zealand, it was a small town. And it was extremely patriarchal, mostly older men, real big book thumpers, And when I was very emotional, which you and I have talked about, and I was crying and emotional, and they'd say, just don't pick up and come to meetings. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, shut up and listen, And it was like, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And for numerous reasons, I'm not okay. And yet the answer was shut up and don't pick up a drink and go to meetings. And, as you said, do service. And, 90 meetings in 90 days. At that point, I was already 5 years sober and saying, I don't need 90 meetings in 90 days. What I need is a group that feels where I feel held, where there's a modicum of emotional sobriety. Because what I found when I got there is there was zero emotional sobriety. What there were mostly old men who hadn't drank in a long time and were still pissed off, is what it felt like. And so I quit going to meetings, and I had been sober probably 9 years by that point. I quit going to meetings, and after 3.5 years, that's when I went out and said, I don't need this. But when I came back in, what I did is I actually met a woman that I had vaguely remembered from sobriety before. This is 13 years later. And I reintroduced myself and I said, are you still in recovery? And she said, yeah. And I said, I need a women's meeting. And she said, let's start one. And so we started a women's meeting that focused on emotional sobriety. And what happened is this was a small town, and men wanted to be a part of it that were pushing against the old big book thumping. And so it grew, and it was co-ed. But when I came to Portugal, I did the same thing. I got online, I looked for some meetings, and I met a woman that I felt connected to, and I said, I need a meeting that feels, well, first of all, that's English speaking, because my Portuguese is not up to par yet, and where I feel emotionally held. And she said, okay, let's start one. And we did. So that's a big one that I struggled with. Is there's the patriarchy, there's the big book thumping that leaves no room for the nuances that I struggled with, and now, I love the book, A Woman's Way Through the 12 Steps. Do you know that one?
Sounds like a good book. I'm going to write it down.
Yeah, it's Charlotte. I have it on my bookshelf somewhere. I won't look for it right now. A Woman's Way Through the 12 Steps. Charlotte something. Anyway, it's really good, and it's a lot more emotionally based. And as you talk about all the time, Lisa, it's that emotional intelligence, that connecting to that emotional self. We're not just brains walking around on legs. So anyway, that was a long answer.
That's okay. We're here to explain, right? We're here to explain, and sometimes it's not a short story, and sometimes it's a little. The person that's supposed to hear your message is listening right now, and that's all that matters. So let's go on a fun note here. How did you end up in Portugal?
um, it's the situation that you were going through with your son. I had something very similar. And during COVID, both of my sons had been in Europe, and they both came back to New Zealand, and they were back in New Zealand for a while. And then as COVID was clearing up, our sons called us into the living room to sit us down for a talk. And they sat Jeff and I down, and my older son sort of taking the helm and said, we're going back to Europe. We both have partners. His partner at the time was pregnant. He said, I'm going to be having a kid soon. You're going to have a grandchild. New Zealand is just too far away. You guys really need to be looking at moving to Europe. And I'm sobbing and like, where are we going to go? I was just going through tissues and sobbing, and a lot of, how could you do this to me? And then saying, oh, sorry, I didn't really say that. And then my son actually said, because we had all traveled to Portugal not that long ago, and I'd been to Portugal several times before that. And he said, Portugal is one of the places in Europe that actually likes retirees. And I said, okay, that's interesting. And I said, but we don't speak Portuguese, and, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, just look into it. And so they ended up leaving. a huge sign, because when it's a 30-hour flight to see your son, that's major, and grandson coming. So I started doing the research and thought and realized, yeah, there's an opening here. They are open to having retirees, and it's affordable, and we could live on a fixed income, and if we sold our house in New Zealand, we could buy someplace here. And we did all the research, we jumped through the hoops, and in August 2023, we came here. We went back and forth to New Zealand several times, doing many things like selling our house, etc. But yeah, 2023 is when we started the process and went back and forth. And then last year, about this time, is when we came for good and sort of
That's
made
awesome. See, look, you can do anything you want to do. Just put your mind to it. That's awesome. I was like, I grew up in New York. I'm sure it's obvious.
I hear it.
I moved to North Carolina for 2 years, and now I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I just wondering where my next adventure is going to be. I just wonder. I don't know where, but it'll find itself. It'll find me, and it's going to be awesome. So, Miss Patti, I have two more questions for you. So if somebody's struggling with something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sobriety, what tool do you want to give them or help them in a situation? If you want to repeat something or give them something new, what would you tell them in that moment of struggle? What can they do to help themselves?
My biggest piece of advice always is ask for help. Always ask for help. You don't have to do anything alone, ever. I mean, I promise people out there, we did not rehearse this. I promise. Yep, exactly. And that's just my go-to always.
Okay, so for those of you who are listening and not watching, I have a card, a business card size piece of paper that says it's okay to ask for help. And when Patti said that, I held it up and I showed it to her and she laughed. So just for those of you who are just listening and not watching.
Yep, exactly. I mean, because we all need each other, I mean, in sobriety, I love the Johann Hari's saying, the opposite of addiction is not sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And I love that. And that's what we need. We need to hold each other up. We need that connection. So I would say that's my number one piece of advice. Ask for help. And my number two would be journal. Externalize that internal process so it's not just going around and around and around and around.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So Patti, when someone wants to learn more from you, how can they do that?
Probably the best way is on my website, which is patticlark.org, or you can find me. I'm on Facebook, Patti Clark writer, Patti Clark author. I'm on TikTok, if you can believe it, 67 and on TikTok. But one of my young sponsees said, if you want young people to find your books, get on TikTok. Oy. Anyway, and I'm at Recovering Woman. I'm on Instagram, Patti Clark author. But yeah, the best way to find all that is on my website, patticlark.org.
I'm gonna look you up on TikTok. I love TikTok. It is so much fun. So anyway, thank you so much for being my guest today.
I just appreciate it so much. I'm grateful beyond measure that we found each other. I just feel a kinship with that emotional connection to your son that I feel so deeply, and that openness and that vulnerability, which speaks volumes.
Okay, so just for those of you that are wondering, my son stopped by on his way. He's moving from Reno, Nevada to Austin, Texas. So just so you know, he was just stopped by for a visit. So that's what Patti's referring to. And I'm Lisa Manzo, and I've been your host for the Phoenix Mind podcast, and I will see you on the next episode.
Bye.
This is the Phoenix Mind, where the fire refines. Together we rise, transform our lives. So subscribe, share the flame, help a friend.